Hi everyone, I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and I'm here today to talk about my latest article that covers the ET intervention on planet Earth. And so I want to go over that article, and it is on my website, projectcamelot.tv, projectcamelot.org, and projectcamelotportal.com. They all go to the same place. So what I want to do is go over that article. First of all, the picture that I've got on my website of the Anunnaki escorting human prisoners along a beach. Actually, that came out a long time ago, and I just brought it to the surface again. I can say that there's no way of knowing if it's really a photograph, if it's a movie, or what. But it looks pretty real to me. Anyway, I thought it would accurately depict what is really going on, so that's why the photograph is part of this presentation. Now, what I want to do is just go over everything that I say. First of all, I want to say that this whole thing was prompted because I was contacted by a person who I believe knows a lot more than they let on, but they were giving me a overview of, or actually the world, an overview of the situation that they see out there, and I saw that there were a lot of areas that could use a lot bigger and better explanation, and so I decided to write to them. And then after I wrote to them and took all the time to do that, I realized that actually this would be something very good for people to hear, so I put it into an article, and as it happens, it's also related to what I write about in my book, which, if I ever get finished with it, will come out in some time in the very near future. So, this is a summary of the playing field, and I do want to say that it's important to realize that this is not going to be complete. I mean, the playing field we're dealing with here on planet Earth is very extensive. And that is why I highlight the Ashiana Dean Voyagers books, because I believe that contains the best history of humanity to date that I've ever come across. And I've seen, the Bible, the Urantia book, and many so-called esoteric texts, etc. But I have to say her books do the best job in my opinion. Now, I also want to say that the Project Camelot interviews is the source for a great deal of my information, but not all. Some comes from my own intuitive downloads. There was some evidence that I was in touch or am in touch with the guardian races, and I'll explain about them as we move on. And I can say that I was abducted since I was a kid, and have had multiple contact experiences since then. Although when I have contact, I do not see the beings. I actually see light beings. So, and there are various types of light beings, etc. So the problem with any assessment of the future is that they do not seem to incorporate an understanding of the fact that the Zionists are actually descended from the Anunnaki, and that they have an agenda which is as an alien race going back to Enki, Enlil, and the Sumerian tablets, the Zechariah Sitchin information, and that reveals their involvement here on Earth. The Ashiana Dean books, Voyager books, also talk about that. Their establishment here on Earth back around 12,000 or BC and earlier was to basically put in place what is called a frequency fence in the brains and DNA of humanity that has started to break down finally, but 90% of humanity at least, some say all, was affected, and this involves the genetic engineering of the human genome back then to separate the DNA, the junk DNA, from the rest of our DNA. Obviously, none of our DNA is junk. The Anunnaki are still here. They never left. Some have come and gone and come back again. And they are walking the halls of the Pentagon, as the Project Camelot witness Bob Dean, Robert O. Dean, Command Sergeant Major, has said, and they are running Israel underground in Dimona. Presence in Israel has been documented by a journalist, Barry Shamish, who died about a year ago or more. He was a rebellious but mainstream Israeli journalist who heard about housewives in Israel reporting that their homes were being invaded by very tall male individuals who would enter without knocking, walk around like they own the place, and largely ignore the housewives' protest, kick any barking dogs out of the way, and had no sensitivity toward animals. And this particular phenomena interested Barry Shamish, who wasn't really a reporter about UFOs or ETs or anything, but he decided to investigate, so he went around interviewing the housewives and checking into these reports. He didn't really come to any conclusion except to note that the description of the beings was remarkably like the beings seen carved into the walls and temples of Egypt and Iran. And I've interviewed Barry Shamish before he died about this on the radio, although that particular radio show was lost along with a number of other radio shows that I've done off of our servers. And so I have other evidence as well that the Israel is run by the Anunnaki, and it kind of goes back over the years. So now I want to go through the fact that the Anunnaki as a race are humanoid. They're very tall. They can be very tall, but they also, it depends on how much Anunnaki DNA you have. You could be, there are even shorter ones, I understand. The long heads found all over the world, notably in South America, as well as the United States. There's an investigator called Brian Forrester who has investigated this, and he has a museum in South America that's full of long head skulls. They're also found in Malta, and there is a huge cover-up in Malta, and have been found in Egypt as well as the rest of the Middle East, although it's largely, again, hidden from public view. The Anunnaki were invaded years ago by the Draco, and so there was a hybrid race of humanoid Anunnaki mixed with reptilian DNA called the Syrian Anunnaki. Consequently, there is some confusion over the fact that Anunnaki can be humanoid or reptilian human hybrids, or if you want to say Draco human hybrids as well. The reptilians are descended from the Draco, so that you understand the line, and the Greys are descended from the reptilians. Now, if you don't understand the role of the Anunnaki in our past, then you're never going to understand what Israel is really all about. They are a fierce race. They're highly intellectual. Khazarian Jews have the Anunnaki bloodline, and they're also involved with Antarctica. I may say that, as full disclosure, I have some Jewish blood, so that means that I have some Anunnaki in me. And with respect, I want to say that I respect David Icke's work very much, although I don't think his analysis goes to incorporate the bigger picture of the ET involvement on planet Earth to the degree that Project Camelot does. And I have been doing this for 15 years, and also my own investigations as well as experiences. So for some reason, he only went down the road of the Draco reptilian gray side of the story. And again, you need to read the Oceana Dean Voyager books to get anywhere near the understanding of the repeated history of the genetic engineering and re-engineering of humanity for the races that have contributed their DNA and genetically messed with humanity basically over the eons. And that will really enlighten you to the much bigger picture than one that is popularly even covered by colleagues and people out there professing to know something about this extremely vast subject. And I do want to say that there are constant visitations by ETs here on planet Earth, that they are that we are not alone, we've never been alone, and that they've been part of our history, as I'm saying, going back millennia. And so let's see. So I put the links on my site to the Voyager books that are basically really written by what's called the Guardian Alliance, which is a group of ETs that involve several different races. I believe at least 12 is what they started with. And the Guardian Alliance is a group of basically races that safeguard humanity. They are the positive ETs out there. And these books, again, are available on my website. I think volume 2 that's an ebook, is the easiest to grasp. And it does talk about things like 9/11, etc. And volume 1, I believe, is available in paperback. It may be fairly rare at this point and may therefore cost a fair amount of money. I also want to say that I went to India with Ashiana Dean and her group and traveled around there, and at that time I was getting downloads from the Guardians basically telling me the same thing she was telling the group like a few minutes before she would start talking. And so that's how I became aware that I was probably in touch with some of those races. Okay, so I do understand that many people out there are attempting to put together a good overview of what's been going on. However, I think that they, as I say, are lacking an overall view and some very key points. So I decided to write some bullet points. And again, these are not, totally complete. And I'm not naming all the races out there. There are too many, actually, to name. I think there will come a day when we are chronicling ET races for each other and getting a whole booklet. Now, there is a booklet out there called the Alien Book or something like that, and it was making the rounds a while back. I think it had quite a few races in there, and I do want to say that we had it on the front page of Project Camelot. It was also released on Veterans Today. For those of you that are interested, I don't know if you can search the web or the Wayback Machine and get a copy of that book. I may still have it. If so, I'll put it back on the front page, just because people might be interested again at this juncture. And I do understand that some people feel that the ET subject, especially people in the mainstream, is too vast and complex, and they don't even want to go near it. But I have to say that what's going on planet Earth at this time cannot be analyzed or even considered to be understood without going into the background that I'm going to give you here. And I have to say that means analysis of news items, the world scene, what Trump is dealing with, and a lot more that's going on, including some of the history of humanity, some very important historical things that went on in history apparently are ET related and not at all what we think they are. So, for example, you cannot possibly analyze the cat and mouse game going on in the Straits of Hormuz, the Gulf of Oman, and the Gulf of Aden without understanding the role of the stargates and portals from which ETs come and go, and what is really going on there, without also having taken on board the role of the Anunnaki, again, who are running Israel. And you have to wrap in the following bullet points into your analysis when considering any news story, really. First of all, that ISIS was created by the CIA, paid to destroy the monuments and ancient sites in the Middle East, to hide the fact that there was a former reptilian rule over humanity. To how certain governments are aligned with competing ET races. That means China is aligned with one ET race, the US with another, Russia with another, and North Korea, and so on. So this actually adds to the world stage, to whether we're at war or at peace with certain governments, etc. And also how our branches of our own military, meaning the Air Force, the Navy, the Army, are aligned with competing ET races. It is known that the Raptors started assisting us, according to Captain Mark Richards, who I've interviewed 10 times at this point, saying that the Raptors have been aiding the Air Force mainly, although they also aid our Navy. And Mark himself was basically Navy, but he had a very close relationship with the Raptors, and still does. And so that's one aspect. Now, this also gets into how England and the U.S., even though we're allies, may have differences. It will actually have to do with, probably to some degree, the relationships we have with various beings, whether they be the Nordics, and Nordics is a huge kind of bucket term for a lot of humanoid races, some of whom are Pleiadian and others who are closer related to perhaps the Anunnaki and other humanoid races out there. There is some thought that all humanoid races come from the same root race. And so number 4, the negotiations about nuclear weapons is a cover for ET negotiations and dealing with various ET incidents that happen. But they will always use talk about nuclear weapons to cover this story. And then how there's evidence that some nuclear sites have had their nukes and missiles activated as opposed to being turned off by some ET races. And this is contrary to many of the reported incidents of them turning off and being very interested in our nuclear development. And one individual who did courageously report this fact was Tom DeLonge, who is a member of the To the Stars Academy. He was their spokesperson early on. It appears that he's been silenced now. I can say that the To the Stars Academy is extremely active in the whole disclosure, sort of putting a spin on disclosure, and that more of that in some of my other presentation videos where I'm talking about Kit Green and the alien autopsy, and there's new news coming out about that now, and I'm going to be doing another video on that. As soon as the so-called transcript of the interview that Rich Dolan has done with him is released to the public, assuming that it will be and that he hasn't been silenced, the bottom line is there is a document 12 pages long that came out saying back in 2001 that Kit Green, as a doctor, had viewed the alien autopsy, apparently not once but 3 times, if I understand it correctly, or maybe he viewed 3 alien autopsies. At any rate, he said that the popular one that Santilli is known to have revealed to the world and was authentic. And this is where he looked at the footage and said that the being was not human. And he also said that the footage was real. Now, apparently recently, he told Rich Dolan that he's changed his story about the being, saying the being is not alien. But in the past, he did say that it was alien. And now maybe he's saying that the being is an android or a biological robot. And we'll have to wait and see what he's going to come up with, but he is changing his story from 2001, apparently. Or maybe he's clarifying a misunderstanding along those lines that he allowed to happen. I don't know. I do know that the alien autopsy investigation I've been doing with the help of Colin Wolford has been interfered with when I tried to make a video on it on YouTube, and I was given a copyright strike by an individual who claims to own the footage and who claims that he faked the autopsy and that the body is a fake. Now, whether or not he's mind-controlled or whether or not he actually made a duplicate and film that, I don't know. And that's a complex cover up and actually relates to a similar procedure that went on with whether or not we went to the moon, the fact that Stanley Kubrick was hired to cover that up, to basically fake footage so that they didn't have to show the real footage of when we really did go to the moon, which we did. And I've got more than one witness testimony on that, including the very excellent testimony by William Tompkins, who wrote a book called Selected by Extraterrestrials and was related to the Pleiadians. And he talked extensively about us going to the moon. He was involved in building the ships and the Apollo program, and he knows that we went to the moon with help, as it said. And we were told this many, many years ago by actually a very beginning of Camelot by Henry Deacon, who became known by his real name, Arthur Neumann, all those years ago. So we did go to the moon, we did have help, and we didn't probably use those little funny little capsules and so on, because those are extremely problematic, like little tin cans. So Stanley Kubrick did do his job and did it very well, and Jay Widener is to be commended in his careful study of all of that. Even Jay Widener says it's possible that Stanley Kubrick has been given perhaps a reverse aging pill and gone to live on Mars in one of our underground bases. We have bases on Mars and Moon, of course, and so on. So, number 6, we're at war with various ET races. Chemtrails often serve to hide the war going on over our heads, and this has been documented by a filmmaker in LA, a former DEA agent who they killed not long ago, who had hours and hours of film of the battles going on in LA, and to this day. And he had a website called ipod.org, and I met with him personally off the record, and he was killed not long ago, and that's very unfortunate. But he was killed right after he posted on ipod.org the fact that he'd been filming these battles, which prior to that I don't think he'd really mentioned. Okay, let's see. That there are many international and national incidents that we think involved only humans, but it was actually humans dealing with ETs. And the Bay of Pigs nuclear standoff was one such incident. The attack on the USS Liberty by the Anunnaki in Israel is another such incident. And the VW-sized spiders in Vietnam, the Vietnam War, is another such ET situation, and that relates back to Angkor Wat. And this information is courtesy of Captain Mark Richards of the Secret Space Program, who again I've interviewed for 10 times, doing interviews I call Total Recall, and that I think is some of the most excellent revealing disclosures by any whistleblower ever. And he is basically being discredited because he is in prison now for 35 years for a murder he did not commit, and supposedly accused of being the mastermind of the murder. And so that I do have an interview in which I go into detail with him on that subject, and I've also published that on my website. That is part of interview number 10, I believe. So let's see what else is here. So we also have current incidents happening, the recent fires in California, 2 years worth of fires, and the destruction of Paradise, California, is collateral damage from the necessity to close opened portals by rampaging ET races. And that's what our military has actually been doing there. They do use nukes, apparently, to try to close these portals. But recently, Mark said we were given help by the Pleiadians. And one witness, Eddie Page, confirmed this to his knowledge as well, that we have been given a new weapon to be able to close those portals without using nukes. And then number 9 is that there have been deals made with Grays, who launched a worldwide genetic engineering program back in the 1930s. They were persuaded to shift their genetic engineering program and plundering and abduction of U.S. citizens to create gray human hybrids down to Latin and South America, where they basically have concentrated since then, although they still violate the treaties and abduct humans in the United States and in Canada and all over the world. This is still going on, and that program is hugely successful. Many of their hybrid offspring are now growing up south of the border. And that the whole border war is all about this. In other words, trying to keep the gray human hybrids from coming into the United States, because there's going to be a huge sort of X-Men scenario in the future dealing with these individuals who have a well-developed intellect and some what we call superpowers, even though the humans have all of these capabilities themselves. And these particular beings are likely to have less heart, mind, or heart intelligence, heart-brain interface, or emotional body that humans who are already a hybrid race actually have, and therefore they will show a lack of compassion. And so this is a future issue. Another thing to do with the border has to do with letting in Chinese troops that are often coming in from underground and so on. So that's what the border is all about there. Number 10, the indications that government officials have been going down to Antarctica since at least the Kennedy administration and before, getting orders from some of the races down there. John Kerry during the Obama election, for example, a certain individual during the Kennedy years was sent down there, and they seem to be getting orders from a race of beings. Now, I don't know what race that is. I have theories. One is the reptilian human hybrids. That may be part of the contingent from Aldebaran that helped the Nazis initially, and then the United States with high tech, and eventually have made it into our secret space program. And then there could be some other races. I do think that the name Antarctica actually sounds to me like it's dominated by ant beings or insectoids. So that's another side of that story. And I also know they have chosen Antarctica as a place where the sort of secret space program and their minions can have secret meetings that other governments won't even be able to tap into with surveillance, etc., and ETs. So there's a lot of ET human interaction going on in Antarctica that cannot be surveilled, although the rest of the Earth is pretty easily surveilled at this point. Needless to say, they're also finding evidence of Atlantis down in Antarctica, and technology that was part of the Atlantean sort of establishment and civilization that is actually worldwide. Atlantis was composed of many continents, not just one, and this is very important. There's evidence of Atlantis that will be soon discovered, more and more actually, and Bimini is one of the places. Undersea off the coast of Cuba is another, and there are others, as well as the evidence of the Library of Alexandria off the coast of Egypt, and so on. And so also how Africa and the war in the Middle East is with reptoids, which are called human reptilian hybrids, and have bases in Iraq and Syria and down in the remote parts of Africa. It's important to note that the reptoids are the enemy of not only humans, but also the raptors, who have now aligned themselves with humanity because their queen took a look at their future timeline and found that it was to their benefit to align themselves with humanity. And apparently the mantids race is also doing a similar thing. In other words, turning towards the more positive side of the spectrum. And of course, Simon Parkes is notable for having been basically a reptilian mantid hybrid who is disclosing all kinds of good information to the public. And I've had him speak at a number of my conferences, and want to thank him for his very good work. And let's see. So Africa, number 12. Africa has been given largely to an incoming race from Aldebaran, who has destroyed not one but two of their planets, and they are building. They have done this in exchange to allow us to build colonies off planet outside the solar system for humanity. And this has been revealed by Gordon Duff from Veterans Today, and also a secret witness. And I have other witnesses that comply with this. It is depicted in a television miniseries called The Event several years ago. It came out and is now still available, I believe, on Amazon and perhaps Netflix. And then 13, how the Vatican is run by reptilians underground below it. And this was reported by Leo Zagami, a P2 magician, part of the P2 Lodge, and he is an insider who I interviewed years ago on my YouTube channel. You can get that video. Highly recommended. Number 14, how the whole pedophilia epidemic among the elite, the rampant satanic practices, the Luciferianism, is all a reflection of the impact of the reptilian DNA upon certain human bloodlines. This influence is stimulated by the power over others impulse in our society and in those beings, and it involves occult knowledge of the power contained in what is known as Kundalini energy. And I've done several presentations on this, including one on my Vimeo channel, the Project Camelot Vimeo channel, and it's called Orgone in the West. This is something the young have in high amounts, and then it slowly dissipates after puberty. It needs to be reactivated in humans to continue past puberty, and can be done so through meditation. This is something the yogis have known for eons, of course, and been teaching their chelas about in the East. And the reptilians and greys feed on what is called loosh, stimulated by a fight or flight response, meaning then that's why they torture their victims. And the release of that substance in the glands of humans is considered an aphrodisiac by those beings. And this is what the humans who are pedophiles are also tapping into, and they have a large amount of reptilian DNA, as I say. Draco, reptilians, and greys use humans for sex and food. This has been documented extensively in my interviews with Captain Mark Richards, but also with William Tompkins, and he also claimed that Robert Wood, who is part of the Majestic Documents website, and he's someone who worked for many, many years, Dr. Robert Wood, for TRW. However, they have been told not to come forward with this information, although they did. It is revealed in my interview with William Tompkins, if you're interested, and that is a very important interview, and it's 3 hours long, I believe. And this is also considered perhaps the biggest secret. It is something the secret government, secret space program don't want you to know, in part because they don't think you can handle the truth. But in reality, it's because they fear they're going to lose control over humanity if the truth were known. Of course, a large part of the leadership are Satanists and involved in these practices. So that's another reason why they don't want it out there, because they need to purge it from their own ranks, which is problematic. And this analysis of the roots and causes of pedophilia must be revealed before society can actually deal with this huge issue on our planet. And please consider how revealing the reptilians and their historical relationship with humanity is central to being able to administer any real justice in these cases. In essence, you can't kill them all or throw them all in jail. It's simply not practical. There's got to be a re-education issue. There's got to be an awareness, and it comes down to power over others. The young become prostitutes, sometimes by force and sometimes by choice, to climb out of their powerlessness. They use the only form of power they have, sexual, to coerce and seduce the old. It is not a one-way street. Nothing is. There are no real victims on planet Earth. This is all about a learning experience and individuals that have chosen to learn about the dark and or the light and to educate themselves accordingly. And in the occult side of this, while it remains hidden, it continues to enslave. If we don't expose this to the light, how is it going to change? The most corrupted will only go deeper into hiding while the young continue to fall under the sway of predators. If we don't want our children to be victims of predators, then we must out this story. And also, this is the only way they're going to learn to protect themselves, and for us also to be able to protect them. And you can see that the real roots of this epidemic are known. They're known by the top echelons, and anyone who keeps quiet on this is basically a facilitator, in my view. Most of my colleagues and many others are giving a very superficial reading of the situation on Earth to give people hope, and perhaps because they, like the military and secret government, secret space program, think humanity can't handle the truth. I disagree with this assessment, and I think that humanity can handle the truth, and it is imperative for our sovereignty and well-being that we do so. That is, out these stories. You simply cannot analyze the world stage without wrapping those bullet points that I've just mentioned into your analysis. Otherwise, you come across as being dumb from the perspective of those in the know, and that is some of Congress, Trump, the Queen, and many other top officials, as well as militaries, members of some militaries worldwide. And without that sort of awareness, you appear harmless and ineffectual, and that is, of course, what the powers that be prefer. So it is, as I say, this analysis is crucial to understanding the big picture, the playing field on planet Earth, and how you can begin to deal with what's really going on, how we can all out this situation so that humanity can free itself and not be under sway of the reptilian influence, among other influences from various visiting races. And this also doesn't even contain the important information that I got recently from Mark Richards, saying that we are currently being invaded by 6 AI from off-planet artificial intelligence that are negatively based. In other words, don't have our best interests at heart. And this is crucial information as well. And the story goes on. I don't profess to know everything, but I can say that for some reason I seem to have a larger overview than most of the people out there. And this information is so crucial that I decided to put it together in this quite short presentation or talk here on YouTube. And then I will also, I've written it into a book, and I'm going to be releasing that as soon as I can get it all done and properly edited. And I am looking for publishers. I have a publisher that has made me an offer, but it is too small. And because I have access to a huge audience of my own, I actually need a publisher that has something they can bring to the table to increase my audience and to bring this information to the people that really need it, that is, those who don't have any idea about it. And so if you know of a publisher and you want to help, please do write to me at carrie@projectcamelot.tv. Thanks for listening and for watching, and take care.